Once you've ruled out the impossible, whatever remains, however improbable, must be true.
And it is not a question of a little occultism or a touch of mysticism, Mr. Denton. It is vampires. It's a host of damned souls of telepaths.
I am thy father's spirit, doomed for a certain term to walk the night.
Here, the old gods aren't dead.
And what of the true god?
He's dead. He can't complain.
People assume that time is a strict progression of cause to effect, but actually, from a non-linear, non-subjective viewpoint, it's more like a big ball of wibbly-wobbly, timey-wimey stuff.
You're listening to Paranormal UK Radio.
Hi everyone, this is Irene and Mark, the host of the Paranormal UK Radio Show, the flagship show of the Paranormal UK Radio Network. I had to take a breath there. Oh my God.
You need to start off with a long breath, but we're going to keep going. So who's your co-host?
Oh, well, I didn't breathe in before I started it. I normally do take a long breath so I can get through the whole sentence, but I didn't do that this time. Mark Johnson.
Yeah, okay, there we go. See, at least you remembered my name.
Yeah.
Oh, good Lord. Well,
God, I always do a blooper.
Yeah, well, you know what? This one stays in, so.
All right. I don't care. I don't care. People laugh at me. They laugh at me. I don't care. I've got a thick skin.
They're not laughing at you. They're laughing with you. Well, they're laughing at. Well, I'm laughing at you.
Yeah.
So,
okay.
Are you getting all ready for Christmas?
Yes, I've been busy putting up Christmas decorations. I've only decorated 4 rooms downstairs this time. I've gone, and I haven't overdone these rooms, you know, because I don't know when the kids are. They won't be down until after Christmas. So it's hardly worth going all out on it. And, you know, they're just dust catchers anyway.
Yeah.
Aren't they? Let's face it. But I have got 6 Christmas trees. I've just counted them. 6 Christmas trees up in the house on various places. One in the hallway and in the rooms, and a little one on the windowsill in the kitchen.
That's too many for me. I have 1. It took me long enough to put it up. Yeah. Well, next year I'm going to have even more. Years and years ago, I bought a little Christmas tree in a pot. And after Christmas, I felt so sorry for it because it was rooted. It had roots on it. I just couldn't send it to the chopper. So I felt so sorry for it. So we planted it at the bottom of the garden. And now Mark is massive. Absolutely massive, this tree at the bottom of the garden. And I would love to decorate that up every Christmas, but you've got to think about the cows in the field at the back of it, you know. But I would love to decorate it up, but it's getting the electricity all the way down the garden to it. Yeah.
It's just a hassle. So, no, we haven't decorated that one up.
Oh, well.
But after the storm, all the decorations will be going up outside the house, you know.
When will the storm pass?
They reckon it should calm down by Thursday.
Oh my God! So you got today. We're recording this on Tuesday, so you got a couple days left.
Yeah, today's the first day of it, and then it'll be blowy tomorrow, and then it should start calming down. Maybe a bit of rain on Thursday, and that will be it. But you know, it was only about 10 days ago that we had Storm Arnhem come through or something, Arwen come through, and that uprooted one of the trees out in the garden.
Oh, boy.
Took it completely up out the ground.
Good
Which
Lord.
is a shame.
Welcome to winter. It's just around the corner.
Yeah. This is it. And my son, I told you, didn't I? He's just travelling home from Paris, and they had to all get out of the railway station in Paris because there was a bomb scare. Police come running in and threw them all out.
Oh, great.
So, you know, I expect that was a bit of a nuisance for him.
It's typical coming in the end of 2021, I swear. We didn't think 2021 could be worse than 2020, but take that back.
It's worse and worse every year.
Yeah, I know. Wait to see what the next couple of years is going to be like. So why don't we go ahead and we'll get on with the show. I do want to just mention real quick to our listeners, if Irene kind of cuts out or is drops, we'll try to bring her back in, but because of this bad storm hitting the UK, we may lose her or we may have some sound quality issues. So just want to let everybody know. But
I got sound quality issues every week. I don't know about that.
Well, yeah.
I don't need a storm for that.
That's called your mouth.
Yeah.
Yep.
Very true.
Well, we're really excited to have these guests back. This is their third time on our show because they have released their third new film. It's the third film in the Extraordinary series called Extraordinary the Revelations. So we want to welcome the director John Sumple and the writer and producer Jack Roth. So guys, welcome to the program.
Glad to be back.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Yeah, now
hello boys.
The documentary is now available for viewing, correct?
Correct. It is available for digital download and on-demand rental. Okay,
fantastic. And hopefully, like the other ones, it'll appear on Amazon or Netflix in the near future.
Yeah, it's on all the major, I guess I wouldn't say all the major platforms, but it's on iTunes, Apple Plus, Amazon Prime, all the main ones. It's also on Google Play, and what else? Xbox, just Vudu and Venmo. Not Venmo. What's the other? Vimeo.
Okay. Now, the last time we had you on, we talked about Extraordinary, the seeding. And now this one is the Revelations. So just tell us a little bit about how this film came about and how you focused on what the subject matter really is on this film.
Jack, I'll let you take. We alternate back and forth as we do these promotional things. So, Jack, I'll hand it off to you.
Thank you, John. Basically, this is a continuation of our journey that started over a decade ago with the first film, which was Extraordinary, the Stan Romanek story. And at that point, after we had finished that film, John and I talked about, there's more story to tell here because I feel like we just gotten to a certain point and we had almost more questions than we had answers. And we knew that we could probably make a trilogy, which is why then we continued on that journey of, through Extraordinary the Seeding and now Extraordinary the Revelations. And really what it is, it just, we start out talking about one man's journey. And then we start talking about, obviously these strange experiences that he had and abduction scenarios and hybrid children. And we wanted to continue on that journey with hybridization programs, if there were any, what it is, and what they were like and what people were going through that were experiencing these abductions. So that's why the second one focused more on, it was more female, but it was both, but, unexplained pregnancies and what that meant and how it affected these individuals who were having these experiences. And so we wanted to finish this trilogy, if you will. It's kind of like a loose trilogy, but we wanted to take it to that final step of the end game. Why? If this is all happening, why is it happening? And that's what, among other things, but that's what we focus on in the third documentary. We're basically, again, it's like finishing off a loose trilogy that every one of these can be seen on their own. But this is it's our journey of discovery and what we thought we had to continue to tell and where we were going to go from point A to point B to point C. So that's why we needed to make this. And this film, more importantly than the others even, it's really, you can draw more conclusions about it, but it's really more about discussing what the possibilities are of an end game, of the why. Why is this happening? Why is the government covering it up? And so that's what this film focuses on.
Now, to date, this film has won 10 official film festival selections, including
18.
best. How many
18,
now?
18 festival selections and four best documentary wins.
Wow. Okay. So Lori needs to update her.
Well, that might have been we've been submitting all the way through the launch date, so we were being accepted into festivals all the way up until the end of November.
Fantastic!
Congratulations!
Thank you.
That is absolutely excellent.
So now, with the film, I mean, yeah, it does talk a little bit more about, the military, the end game. I mean, what drew you, and how did you get a hold of some of the people that you interviewed for the film?
Well, I give that kudos to Lori, and when Jack and I first started working on our first film, we knew some people, not a lot. But over the course of the last several years, with connections that we made with Lori Wagner, we have been introduced to many more people, to the point now where I think we have some awareness within the genre to reach out and connect with people because our films have been now out there and people are aware of who we are. I think people see the quality of the work that we do, and that our objective is to serve the people that are in the film, not serve our own personal agenda. So people like working with us, and I think that's a pat on our back that we embrace, because we do want to serve the stories of the individuals that we talk to, both experiencers and researchers, because the researchers have dedicated their lives and the experiencers have had experiences that most people can't relate to. So it's in our best interest to serve the people who have done the heavy lifting, the work, the research, and the people who've had the experiences. So we're fortunate enough that we have built that relationship with the community over the past decade, that we can pick up the phone and reach out to somebody and encourage conversation that could lead to an opportunity to be a participant in a film.
And, roughly how long did it take you to make this film from, concept to the final product? I'm speaking as a former filmmaker myself too, so I know how much
COVID kind of threw a little wrinkle in there.
Oh, I bet.
And we do all of our post-production remotely. So editor in California, somewhere else in the world, currently in Mexico, was in South Africa for a good part of the edit as we were going through that. COVID created some wrinkles. We had some funding delays. So there was a process that took us a couple years to get it done. So from the point of finishing up the production side of it to the point where we released it was about a year and a half from that. But it started conceptually by the time we finished the last film. So pre-production and development started, that would have been about 2.5 years ago, 2.5 to 3 years ago. And long process.
And for the COVID notwithstanding, the pre-production process, getting everything ready, planning everything out from conception, gathering your guests before you start filming, how long does the pre-production take for usually for your films?
Jack, I think we've got that down pretty pat right now, because we have somebody like Lori, and we just cast a wide net. So when we started talking about this film conceptually, when we were working on the second film, and we had people that we interviewed at that time that we wanted to bring back for this third film. So the wheels were in motion quite a while ago to get that momentum. But it's Lori does a lot of the heavy lifting, so big kudos to Lori. We wouldn't be able to do what we do without her. She's got a lot of connections and moves mountains and knows people who can connect us to the people that that might be a little bit more challenging for us to do. So yeah, we're so grateful to have a producing partner that is able to reach out and make those connections for us.
Well, the film, I'm just really proud of you guys and happy for you that it's gotten so much notoriety and all these film festivals. And I really encourage our listeners, everybody, to go out there and watch the film. Now, with this film, you break it down into 3 specific paradigms: the ET presence in a historical significance, biblical, ascension, and colonization. So let's talk about in the historical aspect, the biblical aspect. Now, that's been covered a lot in other programs, everything from Ancient Aliens, the Chariots of the Gods, but it really is fascinating when you look at the Bible and some of the verses in the Bible that really, when you take a look at it from a modern perspective, really do seem to indicate some kind of more of high technology more than a, spiritual or religious experience.
Right. And it's not so much that people, with the biblical narrative, and one of the things that as we started to develop this and as we started to interview people, and we realized those were the 3 main paradigms. I mean, there are other belief systems, but for the most part, these were the 3 main ones where most people, and what was interesting about all 3 of them is that they all believe, everyone and every one of them believes that the ETs are real. They're visiting us. They're communicating with us. They're experimenting on us. And the only thing that's different is what they think, the why of that. What is the end game of that? So with the biblical narrative, it is a biblical narrative. It's not so much a religious narrative because it relates directly to what's written in the Bible. And in that camp, we were lucky to have L.A. Marzulli and Timothy Alberino, who are very well versed in that and have really interesting opinions and have done a lot of great research.
We've actually interviewed L.A. Marzulli not too long ago.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. And, listen, they're coming from a belief system, right? They're coming from that. But they look at it objectively within that. So, in other words, if you read a Bible verse, and as you said, Mark, it's like, well, this seems technological. This seems like they're describing, it's an angel, but it could also be an alien gray, an ET gray. So, and I know that, obviously people have discussed this on other shows, and Ancient Aliens definitely looks into that a lot. But the way they look at it is that in the end, it's a deception. It's the great deception. So and this is where it gets more religious. So they feel like, well, the second coming of Jesus is what's going to save us from the great deception. And the great deceivers are actually not demons but ETs. So it's more of a negative outlook, but with hope, and that's where the faith and the religion comes in. So, and again, as filmmakers, we don't necessarily believe that or not. It doesn't matter what we believe. We just wanted to present that. And I think it goes really well when you look at the other 2 narratives. If it's an interesting dichotomy because you have, as you mentioned, the ascension narrative, which is very positive, and you have, well, this is basically the next step in our evolution. This is all a good thing for humanity, and that's something we'd all like to believe. And then the third narrative, which we can all talk more about, all of these, but the third narrative is the colonization. And that's really Dr. David Jacobs, who's done an enormous amount of research over the course of decades and is one of the, I would call, premier researchers in ufology over the last 40 years or more. And but he's very straightforward about it, and he doesn't mince words, and it comes across actually very well in the film. But he's like, listen, this is colonization. Whether you want to believe this or not, I have my research. He has all of his evidence, and thousands. He's spoken to thousands of people and regressed thousands of individuals, and he comes to that conclusion of this is not a good thing. This is colonization. These hybrids that they're creating are replacements, basically, and will be used for manual labor or whatever. And he's basing this on his research, on what people tell him about their abduction experiences.
I have mixed feelings with Dr. Jacobs. I've never had a chance to talk to him, although I have read his book. I've seen his interviews, and I know he takes a much more negative, and I'll call it, and this is just my opinion, fear-based approach to the subject. Now, I completely understand why he would think that. When you hear about all of the hybrids, and a lot of that was discussed in your last film, The Seeding, that there is this hybridization program that seems to be going on, and many abductees talk about having sperm or ova taken from them, and then, or women who are pregnant, then the babies disappear, and then later on in an abduction experience they're shown a hybrid child, and yet it sounds horrid to a lot of people. And yet I've interviewed some abductees and read some other accounts that seem to suggest that there's much more going on there than just simple replacement or colonization. Maybe I don't know. I understand where he's coming from. I do, but I also personally don't feel it's all as negative as he thinks it is. Plus the fact that when we're talking about ETs, I think it's helpful for people to understand that we're not just talking about one group here. We're talking about many, possibly dozens of different groups, each with different agendas. Some might be positive and benevolent. Some may not care one way or the other, and some may be very malevolent and not have our best interests at heart.
And that's the X factor. That's what John and I realized when we were doing this. That's really the X factor, because if you consider the negative abduction experiences, right? And people tend to think of the reptilians or even the grays as a more negative experience. And then you have your positive experiences that seem very, very much more spiritual, whether it's with the Pleiadians or the Arcturians, where there's these advanced races. They're here to help us. So you're right. When we present all these, and the people in each of these camps is very, you're not going to it's going to take a lot to change their opinions about what they think it is. But on the outside looking in, one of the benefits of being filmmakers is we look at all of it and they're like, it's probably a combination of everything. It's good and bad, because nothing's black and white. I mean, John, when you think that we kind of came to that as we realized that, it's like, well, that's, if there's more than one agenda.
Yeah, the most compelling part of what we uncovered during we did the research. The research is pretty black and white in each one of those paradigms. It is what it is. But when you talk to the individuals that are believers or have done research in that area or have been following it for decades, their level of conviction, you could not convince them otherwise that their belief paradigm is wrong. Now, there is acknowledgement from different individuals that if you show me something that would alter my belief structure, that really is a paradigm shift away, then I would consider it. But the fact that they're so convicted in what they believe is really what we wanted to make sure came out loud and clear in the film, because what we want to do is encourage people, not so much people who already believe in one specific paradigm or are hardcore believers in ufology and in visitation and abduction and experimentation and reproduction. This film is more for people who are curious and still figuring out what their beliefs might be. We present a lot of information throughout the entire hour and 45 minutes to help people kind of go on a journey of their own self-discovery. So we're hoping that during the course of watching the film, for somebody who has not given a lot of deep thought to this, to be like, wow, this paradigm really resonates with me. I want to go and learn more. Because at the end of the day, the main conclusion that we can draw is we don't know. But we can think that it might be an amalgamation and support from different areas, because there's good and bad in everything in between.
Well, one thing when you mention the Great Deception, there is, in my own research and in being able to talk with a lot of a lot of different experiencers and or reading about other accounts. The Great Deception, there does seem to be an element of when they do present themselves to people, even whether it's a positive experience or a negative experience, it does seem that they are able to not only change the perception of the person having the experience, altering their memories, putting in screen memories, but also the fact that I think sometimes they can alter their appearance based on what they think the person expects or what they want to achieve in whatever the encounter is going to be. That they have that ability to change their entire appearance to anybody they want. So in a way, you talk about the Greys. The Greys have been in popular culture now for like 70 years, almost since Roswell. And yet, when you hear about earlier accounts, you don't hear so much about the Greys. You hear about other beings. You have ancient cultures who, like in Mayan, Aztec culture, you have Kukulkan or Quetzalcoatl, the feathered serpent, or he also appeared as a red-haired beard man. You have the human forms, people who experience what they call the Nordics, and yet which are very tall, blonde-haired, good-looking human aliens, and yet something about that strikes me as possibly not true. That might be just like a screen, a projection of what they want the people to see in order to make them feel more comfortable.
Yeah, and that's an interesting observation too, because one of the things, again, and it's all presented in the film in a way where people can digest it and form their own opinions and do their own research, which is our goal. We want people to do that. But it is interesting because we're, as human beings, where we are right now. And when you think about let's pull back a little bit and talk about big picture stuff. And it's easy for other human beings to manipulate and deceive other human beings. Mm-hmm. So imagine how easy it would be for an advanced species to manipulate and deceive human beings. And I say this because we know that the government is deceiving us and manipulating us. Mm-hmm. And, so that's our own government. And so imagine even if a race of benevolent ETs, let's say the Nordics or the Pleiadians, the Arcturians, that they have good intentions, but with their technology and their abilities, if they did want to do some experiments on us or research or watch us, that's all a manipulation. That's all a bit of a deception, because what's really happening? And I don't know that we have any. I don't know how much power we have in that. And I know people get upset because, oh no, we have the power. We can, this is all about our evolution, and we have the power. We have the spiritual power to change that and make it a positive thing. And to an extent, I agree with that. But we're still dealing with the fact that as human beings in general, and we're really very easily manipulated. It doesn't take much. And governments have known that this is a fact for a very long time, and they use it to their advantage on their citizens all the time. So, yeah, the idea of deception and manipulation and all of that, I mean, what are we really dealing with? I mean, how much power do we actually have when it comes to our own destinies, not so much individually, but as a race, as a human race? How much say do we have in what's going to happen 50 to 100, 500 years from now?
And there's a part of me that sits there and thinks none, because as individuals, I mean, what can you really do? I mean, look at how crazy the world is right now. And as an individual, what can you do to affect any kind of change, especially with all the manipulation that's going on and causing all this negativity, and the world seems to be going crazy right now. So it's hard to even to unite people. And yet, it also, if you, and I this might go back to the seeding a bit, is the fact that with these hybridizations and what Dr. Jacobs is calling a takeover, an invasion, but yet there's a lot of evidence and a lot of researchers who talk about the fact that we were created to begin with by these beings, whether they manipulated hominid DNA and created hybrids. Like, we are a hybrid race to begin with. Back tens of thousands to maybe millions of years ago. Or we came from another planet. There's some theories that we came from, Mars or another planet, and then when Mars died, that we really relocated over here to the Earth. So it's like they've been fine-tuning our DNA as we go for generations. Even the old stories of from the Sumerian civilization of the Anunnaki creating mankind mostly as a slave race, to mine gold for them. Again, showing that there is that manipulation of humankind to be a certain way.
Well, it's no different than what we do on this planet to the different species that populate the Earth. We cultivate them, we manipulate them. We're looking for the best genetic composite to serve a specific need. We study, we tranquilize, we tag, we mark. It's really just extrapolate up. And we, maybe Earth is just a grand petri dish, and we're a big experiment. This is the kind of stuff that we love talking about, because we don't know. We don't know what it is. I have a tendency to just look at it as, well, we all came from something. We all started somewhere. It's not like we were, we started off in another, universe that was at another Big Bang, and we teleported over to this universe from a second Big Bang. If we all came from the same source, we're all related in some way, shape, or form. So I have a tendency to kind of look at it from that cosmic genetics, is that we're all kind of related. We all go back together. So let's have more of a can't we all just get along type of approach to it, and look for the positives as opposed to focus on the negatives. And try to look at it from that perspective. That's my own personal way of looking at it. But I think what we are seeing when we've made films is people respond to the content based on what they already believe. And we have had people who loved what we've done, and we have had people who don't like what we've done, whether some people said the messaging is too negative. Well, we've had some people say to us that abductions are not negative at all. I think it was the Free Report has done all this research, and it's great that they've done what they've done. But we've talked to quite a few people who've had traumatic experiences. So not everything is a positive experience. Maybe they'll get there eventually. Mary Rodwell says in the film that a lot of times people are traumatized until they truly understand what their purpose is, and they understand that they had a contract coming in that this is what they were going to do. So there's a lot of ways of looking at it, that there's probably more commonality than there are differences, but we just don't focus on it.
I've mentioned a lot when we talk about this subject. I refer back to Whitley Strieber. Now, in the late 80s, he came out with his book, Communion, which detailed his experiences with abductions starting in December of 85, not too far, just about an hour and a half away from where I live here in New Jersey, up in Pine Bush, New York, is where he had his cabin. And that was also around the time of the famous Hudson Valley UFO flap. But when reading his books over time, and then, again, I've had the pleasure of being able to, Irene and I have interviewed him a few times, and I see where the evolution of how he feels about his experiences, because in the beginning, he was absolutely terrified, scared out of his mind, thought he was going crazy, didn't know what to think of it. And he even had a very negative view on it for many, many years. And it's been within the last decade or so, I've seen how his whole opinion of it has changed, because he seems to be having a completely different interaction with these beings now. And then he has more memories coming back where he's like being taught, he's learning things, and also the fact that they seem to have something very much to do with our spiritual existence, where he's encountered people who have died during some of these abductions. Even now, his wife, who passed away a few years ago, is still interacting with him. He wrote a whole book on it called The Afterlife Revolution, and it incorporates a lot of that after-death communication, still incorporated with what the visitors are doing. So it's a very, taken as a whole, he's had a very transformative experience, where a lot of other experiencers have had maybe just a one point of view, like they're taking me against my will, I didn't agree to this, they're doing these experiments to me, they're hurting me, and they look at it just extremely negative.
I think that one important part of that is making sure that people communicate and reach out and connect with people who can help them better understand what may have happened to them. That's something Mary Rodwell talks about, and all of the different regression therapists that we've talked about, is find the community that can help you better understand what's happening to you, and you'll probably be coming to a point, it might not necessarily be peaceful and everything's perfect, but you'll have a better understanding of who you are, what's happened to you, why it's happening to you, and where you go from here.
Right. And it's when we talk about, you could really say, we've spoken to women who have come out and said, listen, I was raped during an abduction, and there's no other way to put it. So, if you have these experiences and these things are happening, now again, it might be the kind of thing that over time, then they see their hybrid children and there's a lot of love there, and it becomes a more spiritual thing. But it's like asking a question, when's the last time you beat your mother? Well, if you ever beat your mother, it's a really bad thing. So if you start something out with, taking someone against their will, right? Mm-hmm. And doing these things, then it's I'm going to be a little upset with you, even if the end, down the road things are better. It's like, well, you scared the hell out of me for 10 years. You mentioned Whitley, so yes. But it becomes, if you're more advanced, do you automatically have that kind of belief that this is your right to do this, that you have every right to do this to a less evolved group of people or a race, just like we do with monkeys, right? Mm-hmm. Think about the experiments we've done on animals. And people might say, well, it's for the greater good. They're thinking the same thing about what they're doing to us. It's for the greater good. We're creating a new species. We're saving our planet. We're repopulating. We're advancing. We're evolving. We're helping the human race. Mm-hmm. But the means to the end, we could say that. We can say that about cancer research and monkeys and mice and but certainly when you go up to the more intelligent, we're doing this to pretty intelligent species, whether it's monkeys. I mean, we slaughter pigs, and pigs are really smart. Mm-hmm. So you have to put this in perspective from that standpoint.
Exactly, and again, perspective is everything, and you can look at the same situation from like 10 different perspectives. You mentioned earlier about some experiencers who say that they were in a contract, that before this lifetime they agreed to come in to have these experiences. The same thing can be said about reincarnation in general. That we could be in this lifetime and we can be having like the worst, crappiest lifetime, and some people would say, well, you chose this lifetime for the experiences. So you have to look beyond the physical world and look at in the bigger picture, which it could include the spiritual world, if you believe in that, or what your views are on it, whether it's religious or spiritual. I happen to be more on the spiritual side of things and looking at actually more at things from an interdimensional level. Many different levels of existence, this physical just being one of them. And we're here for an experience, and some people are having these experiences. Not all of them pleasant.
I kind of lean a little bit more in that direction too, is that we don't know what we don't know. And until the information is presented and we have a keener knowledge and understanding and are able to experience dimensions beyond what we currently understand, more opens up. The possibilities of our existence become, the questions become greater. And the more information we're going to want to learn as a result of every single time we learn of some sort of an advancement and awareness of who we are and why we're here. So I think that we have a tendency to always look at things through the lens of where we are today in our existence. And one of the things that we wanted to try to do in the beginning of the film, in the opening 5 minutes after the credit sequence, is to make people understand that we start the film off 40,000 years ago with the Wandjina cave paintings in Australia and kind of move all the way through to current day very quickly, just to kind of give the perspective as that the people of those cultures were documenting what they saw from the perspective that they had at that moment of their existence, not from the perspective that we currently have today. We cannot sit there and project what they believed based on our knowledge today, because chances are pretty good if things were happening around them, they were used to it. It wasn't like, oh my God, they're coming from another solar system. They had no idea what a solar system was. They had no idea beyond the night sky and the stars that moved in the sky. That's pretty much their experience. So their knowledge of the existence of beings was, this is just part of our everyday life. This is what we're seeing in the sky. This is what we're interacting with. These are the energies that we are aware of, and their level of knowledge was finite in the same way that ours is today. So if you were to take somebody from that time frame and put them into where we are today, their mind would be blown. In the same way that if you take somebody from our mindset today and put them 100 years, not thousands of years, but even 100 years from now, it's going to be exponentially different than it is today. So we have to stop thinking about things from our current earthbound, bubble that we're in, the construct that we've been led to believe is true, and be truly curious and open. And that's really what we want to do with our films, is push people to ask those questions. What if this is all true? What does that mean? What does it mean if it's true? What does it mean if interdimensional beings and travel is possible? What does that mean? Those are very interesting conversations to have once you allow yourself to go there.
And there's so much to talk about and look at. I mean, one of the things, I'm going to go back to Dr. David Jacobs' idea of colonization and replacing us. And if you want to subscribe to the Darwinian theory of evolution, which I really don't personally think applies, but let's just say for sake of argument that human beings evolved from apes, early hominids, and then evolved into what we consider modern man. Well, then if it continues, who's to say down 20,000 years down the line, 50,000 years down the line, we haven't continued to evolve into something else completely that might even look alien. Now, are we still human? Of course we are. I mean, this is who we are. This is part of our genealogy. Now, whether or not it's being artificially manipulated and pointed into another direction, whether we're being, they're altering our DNA, they're adding certain things to our DNA, to me, and again, my opinion, doesn't necessarily mean, they're replacing us with them. I think it's a continuation of the process they started, tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of years ago, slowly changing and altering humanity into whether there's an end game or whether it's just a continuation of the process. I don't know. But in the end, I think we're still human. We're still going to be us. I don't think it's a replacement program.
All right. Listen, it's fascinating, and John's right. We love talking about this because it's as filmmakers, when we're making the film, it's about reaching the widest audience. So are we necessarily trying to reach someone like Whitley, who's had these experiences for over 20 years? So not necessarily, and we hope he likes the film, but he might not because of where he's at right now. Like John said, it's where you're at now. So if you look and you're gonna look at Dr. Jacobs like, he's wrong, like that's human nature. Mm-hmm. So, but as filmmakers, we're trying to just reach. Most people are inquisitive to an extent, and they're curious about certain things, but we've been so distracted in the modern world we live in. John mentioned going back thousands of years and how man was very in tune to the stars and the night sky and the sun and land, and they were more connected, and they were more connected spiritually, in a very non-religious way, connected to source. I believe that, and the Native Americans were. And so, but now we're so distracted by everything. And one of the things it's an interesting story, but after we did the second film, we had a premiere in South Florida, and there's a friend of ours we've both known a long time, and she came up to John afterwards and said, John, I have to be honest with you, I've never thought of this. I could never wrap my head. I mean, I just never thought of asking these questions. And I remember when John told me that, I was like, how could she never ask those questions? We're basically asking, are we alone in the universe? And, these are important questions. But I think what it shows is that a lot of people are so wrapped up in their daily lives that they forget what they're actually should be connected to. So if we can just open some people's minds to say, hey, ask these questions. These are real things. And a lot of people aren't comfortable. They don't want to go there because they're scared. Fear is a big part of this. And I've noticed that with people. They're comfortable in their lives, in their little boxes, and they don't want to go outside of those boxes. They don't want to ask very difficult questions. And these are very, very scary questions because you're coming at it with it's the unknown. Well, I don't know what happens when we die. I don't know if we're alone in the universe. What if this? What if that? But imagine if collectively, as humans, we were able to open up more and just ask the questions, do more research, and ask and say, what is our purpose? What is or the human condition all about? What is this? And then also, the second part of that is demanding the right to kind of know what's being held from us, which would get us to the military part of this. But that's why are we being deceived? Why are we not being told what's going on? I think it would scare the heck out of a lot of people, but I personally think we get past that and say, well, okay, this is our purpose. This is what we're doing. This is what's going on right now. Well, so that's kind of the way I look at it.
Well, I know I've been throwing out a lot of my own opinion on here, but you're absolutely right. As filmmakers, the best films are the ones where you walk away asking a lot of questions. You're not telling a one-sided point of view. You're presenting multiple different ideas and theories that at least get people to think and look at it. You're not saying what's right and wrong. You're collecting the data. You're collecting the information. You're presenting it to people. Let them make up their own minds. And it may, like the woman who came up to you, she never thought of that before. So it's broadening her experience and causing her to question, and hopefully a lot of other of your viewers to at least question the phenomenon and maybe take an understanding of it. Maybe it might help spark some people to realize that they've had their own experiences that maybe they've repressed or weren't aware of before to then. So
and there's a good point in that too, in that people who already believe, dyed in the wool, have had experiences, are connected to the energy of this film. When they see it, they might there's nothing new in here for me. And that's probably true, But you could say, after watching this film, I know 10 people who would love, or not love, but I know 10 people who need to see this. Because this film is not for people who are already there, comfortable in their skin and what they believe and understand. This is for people who might not know or might not connect to that part of them or their personal experiences. So what we would want to encourage is if you watch the film, you're like, yeah, there's nothing new in there for me. Well, what's new in there for somebody that you might know that would be enlightened or at least go on the journey of discovery? Because the one thing that we've heard over and over again from anybody who has seen the film, and a majority of the people who have seen it are not necessarily ufology followers or fans. They're seeing it at film festivals. They're seeing that in different screening scenarios. And the response has been from most of them is like the wealth of information comes at you fast and furious. I need to see this again. I need to take notes. I want to go on journeys of discovery for my own personal self based on what I've seen in this film. That's who this film is for. It's to open minds, encourage discussion, talk about possibilities, and ask questions that you might not be comfortable with or that might get you to a different point of understanding the human experience. Because the one thing that I think Jack and I have learned over the course of making these films is this is not about UFOs and ETs. This is about the human experience reacting to those. So this is more about how we as humans are evolving, the questions that we're asking, the answers that we're seeking, and how we're moving through that awareness process. That's more compelling to us than the actual phenomena. The phenomena is important, but how people respond to it is very important too.
Exactly. And again, generating that buzz, generating that discussion, helps the film too, because then people will talk about it. People will keep it going, and you'll gain more viewership that way. I wanted to throw this out there. Irene, you might notice, has been kind of quiet. We mentioned earlier in the show to people that she's having a bad storm on her end, so we're cutting in and out, and she's having trouble keeping up. So she's texting me. She did want me to ask a question for her or make a statement when we were talking about, the DNA manipulation of humanity. And then we'll move on to another subject here. But she was saying, could it be that they're altering humanity to be able to help us survive this climate change that's coming up? Perhaps they knew long ago it would come about, and it's helping to fine-tune humanity to deal with the way the environment is changing around us. That's a possibility.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Distinct possibility. Yeah. Of course, we have no one to blame but ourselves for this climate change. And when you think about it, the Industrial Revolution, and when you look at time as a whole, it's a split second that we've been doing this to the planet. Because before the Industrial Revolution, planet was fine. And so we're talking about the late 1800s till now.
So about 150 years.
In that short period of time, we're on the brink of some serious issues. And and again, no one to blame but ourselves. And this is where, and I get heated with this, because this is where we as human beings need to stop, think about what's really important, and stop the nonsense. And what I mean by that is we've spoken to so many people over the years making these films and there's this arrogance. There's this idea that, well, come on, a lot of people still think we're the only life in the universe, which is an absurd notion, and we know that's not true. But there's that ego, right? There's that sense of, well, we're better. Because we're the highest. We're the top of the food chain on this planet, or for the most part. I wouldn't bet on a human against a lion without a weapon.
Yeah, I was going to say walk through the savannas of Africa alone and see what happens to you. I don't think we're at the top of the food chain.
Exactly, which is why the whole these hunters anyway. But the point is that we have to and that's it all goes to the same mentality of I don't believe that. I'm not going to open my mind to any of that. I'm just going to live my life. I'm going to make my money. I'm going to have my things, material things, and that's the only thing that really matters. Status, it's ego.
Mm-hmm.
And we are an absolute disaster as the human race is a disaster right now because of this horrible way of thinking and thinking that we're so superior when in fact we've brought this all about ourselves. So when people say, well, are they here to help? Or they here? If I was an ET race and I was looking down on us and we were more advanced and maybe we had already gone through this, right, where we hit that crisis, but we evolved past it. I don't know if I'd be all that sympathetic or empathetic, because I'd be like, well, these people need to evolve. If they don't evolve, and maybe that's why they're manipulating our DNA to help us evolve, and because we're not doing it on our own. And they'd be like, well, they're just going to destroy the planet. So there is that element of, maybe they're just trying to save the planet, and these hybrids are going to come and live here. I am critical about human nature and humanity in general. And I think, if anything, these films have taught me is that he's dead on when he says, this is about the human experience. It's really not specifically, we're talking about UFOs and ETs and all that, but it's really about the human experience.
Mm-hmm.
Well, how do we as human beings get off our high horses and start taking responsibility in every way, shape, or form, whether it's we start holding our government's feet to the fire the way we always should have, the media actually doing their jobs and becoming the fourth estate again,
mm-hmm.
and, holding the government to feet to the fire, and demanding a better life for all of us on this planet. And that's honestly, to come to that, you see how many conclusions and how different ways you can go when you talk about these things, because it's so important. But the people's opinions, and people are when they come to us and they say, well, you know what, I don't think right away, it's maybe we should hold off a little judgment. Maybe we should hold off on thinking 100% that we know all the answers. So many humans, I think, they think they know everything, and we know nothing. If anything, John and I know less today than we did 15 years ago when we started this.
Yeah, that's how I look at it too. It's like the older I get, I realize the less I know.
But that's coming from a point of curiosity, because if you're curious, you keep searching for answers or uncovering new questions, and as you do that, you realize, wow, there's so much more to learn, and I haven't even scratched the surface. Mary Rodwell talks in the film specifically about there's an entire audience of people that say if a UFO landed in their front yard, they'd say it's a fire truck because they do not want to know. They're not interested. They have no curiosity. It just doesn't fit into their paradigm. And there's a lot of people on the planet that feel that way. What we're trying to do is reach the people who are at least curious, open-minded enough to say, gosh, that does not look like a fire truck to me. I wonder what that is, and go from there. And I think that's, Jack's right when he talks about it. It's really on us to go through this process of understanding, and Jack and I have talked about this since probably the first time we met each other at a lunch table at the company we worked at 26 years ago. We would sit there and have conversations about some of these bigger questions, and always curious that there's not always people that want to participate in those conversations, because they're kind of like, yeah, that I don't have a place for that. I don't need to know where I go when I die. And so we're just, what are we? Just passengers on a bus going from point A to point B? There should be some sort of conviction to understanding where we come from and why we're here. Otherwise, it's just, you're a blip. Mm-hmm. In a very, very long timeline. Like Jack said earlier, humanity's existence on this planet, if the planet has been around from 0 to 12 o'clock, we're on this like 2 seconds before midnight.
Yep.
You know, the human existence, we're probably the worst part of the existence of this planet and what we've done to it.
There's two things I'll bring up. The first one,
we're going off on a tangent here, but
you know what?
we get riled up.
We're all on tangents tonight. I know I am. In talking about people's paradigm and beliefs, there's the old saying that it's easier for people to believe a comfortable lie than accept an uncomfortable truth. And you get people. I'll use myself as an example. I grew up in a Presbyterian church, okay? I grew up Christian, and it wasn't until late high school, early 20s, I realized my beliefs were starting to change. And then I reached a point where I realized I no longer just simply accepted what I was being told. This is what you have to accept, or else do this or you'll go to hell. And I'm not bashing Christianity here. I'm not bashing anyone's religion. Just from my point of view, it wasn't enough. And so I started searching for different things. But I went through a dark period there for a while because I was angry and bitter. I felt like I was lied to and manipulated, and facing those truths was very, very hard. And so to come up to somebody, and let's say you have a born-again evangelical Christian, okay, and you come up and try to talk to them about something like aliens or whatnot that they absolutely would not believe in, or some kind of other higher concept that goes against, they'll only want to believe what's in the Bible. What you say to them, it's a threat to their belief system.
Sure.
And when you start to threaten someone's belief systems, they can get very, very hostile, violent.
Until they're shown something that changes that. I mean, I what I encourage people to do is, again, take the mindset of the individuals that existed in different eras on this planet. So going back thousands of years ago, they thought the Earth was flat. Actually, some people still do. I actually saw a clip the other day of a girl who told the story. She's a lobster fisherman, and she tells the story of one of a family member that went off on the boat, and you could see it disappear off the horizon, and he never came back. She says, "I believe that he went off the edge of the earth." And I'm like, is this real? Is this for real? Mm-hmm. That people could actually think that in this day and age, that's a possibility. But thousands of years ago, everybody held that belief. Back in the 1500s, people believed that the Earth was the center of the solar system, of the universe, and found out otherwise. And as we learn about these paradigm shifting movements or momentum in knowledge, we do start to change, and we change our opinions. Physics has changed. We've gone from Newton to Einstein, and there's now new physics that's been around for 100 years that is starting to percolate into more of the conscious mindset in science, and gaining some momentum and traction that 50 years from now, quantum physics may be taught in high school as a prerequisite to going to college. And that will expand our awareness and understanding of our place in the universe, and most definitely on this planet. So I have faith in humanity's ability to move with those shifts as the information comes out, because you have no choice. Look where we are today. We don't have a lot of people who believe that the sun or the earth is the center of the universe. We don't have a lot of people, albeit a few, that believe that the earth is flat, because there's been monumental shifts to prove otherwise. I think that we are going to experience that again. Probably within the next 20 to 30 years, there's going to be some sort of evolution in the dimensional, understanding of dimensional existence that will help guide us to whatever this next evolution of our understanding is. And maybe there are these intelligent life forms out there that are going to help usher us along through that process.
Yeah, we might go kicking and screaming, but,
right.
but hopefully we go, or at least, yeah, I hate to put it like this, but it may not be everybody who goes,
Right.
It's going to be, if you go back to Darwin, survival of the fittest. I mean, there may be groups that are able to advance and other groups that are going to be left behind or may go extinct.
Well, yeah,
because
the kicking and screaming from a religious point of view, and again, it's faith. It's all based on faith, in the same way that ufology is based on faith. So for anybody who's of a Christian belief and says that my faith guides me, the same holds true for people who believe in the existence of beings who are interacting with us, with our species on this planet. That's based on faith.
But there is a little more evidence.
Yes, I would agree with that. Most of the people we've talked to who have studied this from a historical perspective said there's a preponderance of evidence to support the belief in UFOs compared to the belief in Christian belief structure or in any religious belief structure, because they're primarily created as control mechanisms more than anything. And I'm sorry if I'm offending anybody, but just do your research. Go outside of your comfort zone. No one's going to look at you and judge you if you do a little research to determine that the existence of most organized religions are based in pagan rituals.
Yeah, that's a whole nother show in itself.
Where are we going with all this? Boy, we're all over the place.
Well, you know what? I wanted to move forward and talk about, we've talked a little bit about the biblical side, the ascension side, but then there's the government side, and what do you brought up a lot in the film and had people on talking about from the government perspective, what do they know and what are they hiding from us? And why are they hiding it from us? We have everything going all the way back to Roswell, which is the most famous. And what's interesting is Roswell really didn't get on the map until I think the late 1980s, even though it happened in 1947. It was more in the 80s that it started to become into the public awareness. And now everything is Roswell this and Roswell that, and government. It's the epitome of government cover-ups. But there was a lot of other things that our government, our military had experienced even before that they never really discussed or they didn't understand. Even in World War II, the American pilots and the British pilots, and even German pilots talked about the Foo Fighters or seeing things in the air that they didn't understand. But then, later on, we supposedly started collecting these crashed craft, and Roswell is one of dozens of incidents where we've supposedly captured a downed alien or extraterrestrial technology. There's the Kecksburg Incident is another one that comes to mind. There's supposedly another crash that happened a couple months before Roswell in New Mexico, just north of New Mexico. So there's been these programs. There's one of the more famous. You hear about Area 51 back in the 90s. Bob Lazar came forward talking about how he worked at Area 51, working on the reverse engineering of these kind of spacecraft. And, of course, it's all very hush-hush. So, talk a little bit about that from your film and the people you interviewed and some of those perspectives.
I could start, John, I guess.
Sure.
Okay. Well, just to take for people to understand the way we approach this is really the military government involvement part is really the third and last act of the film. So that's really not a paradigm. The three paradigms that we've discussed is really the second act of the film. And then after we go through all those paradigms, then we start talking to what we call military whistleblowers. And that became extremely interesting in its own right, and every part of it's interesting. But what was fascinating is we were able to get people like Dan Sherman, Lynn Buchanan, And I'm sorry, John.
Didn't you have Nick Pope? Nick Pope.
Well, Nick Pope was part of the but he wasn't one of the whistleblowers, but he was in that section a lot. Talked a lot about.
Or was it Louis Elizondo?
Clifford Stone.
No, Clifford Stone was the other.
Yes.
So we had 3 whistleblowers, and how can I forget Clifford? I mean, he was just amazing, and probably the most emotional part of it for us. But that was important to us because that tied together the fact that when you listen to these whistleblowers, they will all tell you that they were, each one separately, involved in a program, a government military program that was related to ETs. Either with connecting with them, communicating with them, retrieving downed aircraft, in Clifford Stone's case, and they were all involved in these very deep, dark, above black projects where they in some way, shape, or form either communicated with or came in contact with ETs. And these are military guys who, again, they served for how many years, and they're these older guys now, and they talk about it with a lot of, and especially Clifford is very emotional about it because he suffered from post-traumatic stress as a result of the experiences that he had as part of this crash retrieval team. And they were all chosen. And then we talked about being manipulated. That's where the true manipulation comes in here is the military, the government. We use those interchangeably, but they are hiding stuff from us. They're involved in these programs. But what that does is, by showing viewers this, it shows that this really does exist. These programs, hybridization programs, exist. These programs where they're trying to communicate with ETs exist. Therefore, they know a lot more than they're telling us. And for them to come out in a Navy video and say, oh, yeah, these things do exist, that's such nonsense. They've known that forever, right? But people talk about soft disclosure and they're spoon feeding us, right? So it's a big deal when they come out and say, oh, look at this radar. Yeah, we didn't know what these things were. It wasn't swamp gas. And the UFO community, ufology is like this big victory, right? Where it's like, yay, they admitted it's not swamp gas. They admitted that these things are not our technology. But it's so frustrating because they already know so much more than that, right? They're spoon feeding us all the information. They're going to tell us what they want us to hear. They're controlling the message, and that's a very big point of this the last part of the film, which I believe really brings it all home, because it's you can't help but be very moved by that, not only by the whistleblowers but by people like Nick Pope, and who were just so insightful as to their experiences and what this all could mean. What is disclosure? What do words mean? The words that the military and the government use, and even press releases when they say things like this. Every word matters, and words can make a difference. That was fascinating for us. Don't you agree, John? That was so cool.
Yeah,
I mean,
it was. And I think one of the things that Nick Pope kind of brings it all home in the third act of the film, with the whole idea of words matter. What's not being said is just as important as what is being said. And the one point that he makes is that there's been information released by the U.S. government that points to 2014 as being a point where things changed, and the language that they started using from that point was from a perspective of a threat. That's very different from what has been discussed for the last 70 years, because for the last 70 years, it's all been about little green men and flying saucers and trying to, minimize it or ridicule it whenever there was some sort of a new, just watch any news clip over probably from like the 60s through the 5-6 years ago. Every time you see a newscaster, they have this rolling of the eye type of, okay, we got a UFO story, woo! There's no credibility. They're not giving any credence to it. But now all of a sudden the military is starting to talk about technology. They're not talking about sentient beings that are controlling the technology. Their focus is 100% on the technology. So like Jack mentioned, the victories are, yes, they're acknowledging it, but they're not acknowledging the whole thing. They're not acknowledging the fact that they've ridiculed people and caused traumatic experiences for thousands, if not hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people over the course of the last 70 years. What's the retribution for that? There's no discussion about that. So there should be an entire audience in the world that is irate over the fact that the militaries of the world are now moving forward with what they know, because there are people who have been destroyed. Their careers, their character have been destroyed as a result of how they were treated once they told their personal story. So I think what we're seeing here is this: there's a time now where they're saying the narrative has changed, and we're going to dictate it. Like Jack said, we're going to tell the story that we want to tell. Forget about UFOs. That's old hat. We're only going to talk about UAPs and what does that mean. And the one point that Nick makes in the film that everybody needs to take into consideration as they think about this is that the U.S. government very easily could have buried this. When the ATIP thing came out, they could have done, there's a lot of different things that could have been done to destroy this, bury it, create something. They could have come out and said that, you know, these were crafts, these were drones, these were things that we were following from our enemies, but they didn't do that. They started acknowledging it. Why? What has changed? What is the reason that this is happening? So I think it's very important to consider that, you know, the story could have been buried. They didn't bury it. In fact, a few years after the New York Times story in 2017, more came out and they acknowledged it. They didn't bury it. They could have easily done it because they've been doing it for 70 years before. So why didn't they this time? Something's changed. Something is different. Something is going to be slowly but surely, the soft disclosure that Jack mentioned is controlled disclosure is happening.
But it's still in my opinion, a false narrative, because I think I'm just going to go back a few decades and then talk about what I consider to be social or societal engineering that we've seen since the late 70s, early 80s, moving forward. And the public consciousness, especially in the Western public consciousness, and usually when we talk a lot about people and their perspective, we really are talking about the Western world, and we really don't take into account like South America or the East in India, China, or Africa, these other cultures. We look at it from a Western point of view. From a Western point of view, they ridiculed it for all of these years, and look what the media has done with it. We started off in like in the 50s and 60s, because of the Soviet Union threat, they would have, alien invasion films. Okay, but that was always an allegory of like the Soviet Union and whatnot. Then Spielberg comes along in the 70s and early 80s and makes two very positive, films, Close Encounters, one of my favorite films of all time, and E.T. And people start looking at the alien phenomena as being cute, but that's also right at the time when, if there was any mention of UFOs or anything in the media, it's the snicker factor. They play X-Files music, they roll their eyes, and it's belittled. Then what we get starting in the 90s with Independence Day, moving forward, everything is alien invasion. Aliens are evil. Aliens are this or that. And they so oversaturate aliens into the Western culture through our media with television shows and movies and whatnot, to the point where now it's so overwhelmed, people don't take it seriously anymore. So now here we have, in this last couple of years, the military releases these videos from the USS Nimitz, the Tic Tac UFOs, as they call it. And they say, oh yeah, we saw this, we really don't know what it is. And it landed in the public perception with a loud thud of nothing.
Right.
People don't care only people who care about it are the real UFO nuts and investigators. And then, like you said, some of them going, oh, look, we're getting disclosure. You have Richard Dolan, Lynn Moulton Howe, Steve Bassett, all these people who've been pounding for, government disclosure forever. They're never going to get what they want. We're going to get this watered down, highly sanitized and manipulated narrative, and it's going to be fed to the people in such a way, and it's already working, where people don't care. Why? Because people are too distracted by everything else. They've been highly conditioned about the UFO phenomenon for so many years, and to pretty much dismiss it as being ridiculous. And everyone's so engulfed in their cell phones and TikTok videos and whatnot, and watching the news, and politics have taken that so much is overwhelmed. People it doesn't even make a blip in most anyone's radar these days.
Well, part of it, there's even been things suggested that this was all part of a plan dating back to the 60s and 70s, to saying, let's start rolling out these films that are creating this, these stories, both positive and negative, so that we can desensitize the population to the possibilities that this is happening. And when the point finally does come, when there is disclosure in whatever form that might be, there's just going to be a shrug of the shoulders. And maybe that's not a bad thing, because I just go and look at any science fiction movie, go back to Star Trek and, the things that you've seen, even going back to The Day the Earth Stood Still and things like that. They're showing this integration. And even like when you watch Star Wars and films like that, or any of the Star Trek movies, or anything science fiction, you're seeing all these races, this amalgam of the solar systems and the galaxies, all interacting with each other. Is that a bad thing? That's no different than what we're doing on this planet. I think that would be a step in the right direction if we slowly move towards an acceptance of that, and it became something that was not like this shocking aha, but more of a, it's introduced slowly but surely to the point where we're like, oh, that looks like that could be an alien over there. Cool. No, not sure why he's here, but okay. I don't know. Right. It could be.
But yeah, and it might not be a bad thing, but in a way, though, it's extremely insulting to anyone with any amount of intelligence whatsoever. Mark, I couldn't agree with you more. It's a total. We've been indoctrinated as a society when it comes to UFOs and ETs. So since the same way we've been indoctrinated with religion since we were 2 years old. Whether it's going to catechism or wherever we went, and our parents and grandparents bought into it. Those were the institutions they knew and loved, and then we were going and we were doing it. So we've been indoctrinated with this forever, and you're right. First thing to say is Close Encounters is one of my favorite movies as well. Fantastic film. It's just absolutely incredible. But you're right. When you think about it, the way this all started and the way you ask yourself this, do these just say intelligence agencies, the people in power, real power in this country, ask yourself whether they have infiltrated Hollywood. And the answer to that is an absolute yes. Just like the way they've infiltrated the media. Yes, they have. And they've manipulated us forever. And because of this, since the Cold War started and even a little before that. So if you ask yourself, have we been indoctrinated? Have we been manipulated? And that's why people don't even know which way is up. That when they actually you would have thought 30 years ago, if the military came out and said, yeah, these aren't ours. They're not the Russians. They're not they are something that we can't explain. They exist. It's not swamp gas. It's not a flock of seagulls. That would have been an incredible moment in our history in the 60s or the 70s. But because we've been so turned inside out and brainwashed 17 ways to Sunday that no one knows what to even think anymore. And you get some really fantastic researchers in the UFO community that are led by the nose with this. And it makes me angry because it's like, wait a minute, it's really not. I mean, they're still manipulating the message, and there's so much they're not telling you. Would you get all excited about this? But why haven't they told us anything about people being abducted in the 70s, Betty and Barney Hill in the late 60s, and all these other things that were happening on these aircraft and military people being, having radiation poisoning and dying and being killed by, the CIA because they knew too much. I mean, this is all real stuff, and people need to realize that when I say intelligence agencies, that CIA, NSA, naval intelligence, the people that really control the message, it's total propaganda. So if people don't think that our country is capable of that, and only the Soviet Union was, that they're gravely mistaken. And that's what people need to understand. And you're right. But I told John, how could people not care about this news? Not that, I mean, we know that's not the complete picture at all, because they'll probably never be able to come out with everything. They'd have to go back and say, well, we killed Forrestal because he knew too much, and so we threw him out a window. I mean, they'd have to admit to a lot of wrongdoing if they came out with the entire truth about the UFO phenomena going back to the 40s. So, but it's tough. We are up against a monster, and we have to just that's why we're doing what we can and what we feel we're good at, to do what we can do to get people to start thinking outside the box and to unindoctrinate, right? To unbrainwash and to start asking the important questions, not what are the Kardashians up to this week, but what is their life in the universe, or are they visiting us? How could you not want to ask these questions?
Well, that's the whole thing is you just hit the nail on the head. All you had to do was mention the Kardashians. It's the dumbing down of society,
right. The noise
too.
is more important.
Yep. Distract you with celebrities, distract you with fame or reality TV, so-called reality TV.
We can blame the writer's strike back in the early 2000s.
Yeah, you watch the latest train wreck. My wife drags me in watching this 90 Day Fiancé. It's one of the worst train wreck shows of these people and making the stupidest decisions in the world. And yet it's become a massive phenomenon. They have 1 million spinoff shows because everyone is watching this trash. Right. And that's what they're focused on. And it's all a distraction. And you know what? And then you show them something real, they brush it aside because they want to go back and watching the trash. Like, oh, what's going to happen next?
Yeah, I think that we have developed a culture of entertainment.
Yeah.
That people are more concerned about being entertained than they are about thinking.
Yeah.
And the entertainment it's gotten down to, it's not about going to a movie. Try to get a millennial or younger to go to a 3-hour movie at a theater. They're like, they won't even sit down and watch it on Netflix. They won't watch a Scorsese film that's 3 hours plus, because they're like, I don't have time for that.
No, they want to watch.
They'll play games for 4 hours.
They want to watch a 30-second.
10 hours.
Yeah, they want to watch a 30-second
like
TikTok video.
Old man. Yeah,
right.
Yeah,
the 30-second. Right.
Yeah, the little sound.
Well, we were talking with somebody who social media expert that's supporting us on our promotional efforts with the film, and he said the TikTok generation would rather watch the entire film on TikTok than they would to buy it and watch it on a streaming platform.
Yep.
He said if you fed it to them in minute-long bites, 140 or 100. 105 minutes bites, they would consume it. They would be more interested in consuming it that way than they would be sitting down for an hour and 45 minutes to watch a film.
Yep.
Zero attention span.
Yeah, we sound like crotchety old men right now.
But it's not, John. It's not. It's really depressing, but it begs the question, do they want us to evolve? And what I mean by they is our own government, the people in power.
No, they
don't want us to evolve. The Arcturians might, the Pleiadians might, but our government doesn't. The people that control things really control. I'm talking about the United States, the big countries, the power players in this world, the world bankers, whatever you want to. All those people, they don't want us to evolve. They want us to be freaking mindless moron sheep.
Consumers. That's all we are.
Consumers. Oh my
Consumer
gosh.
sheep. And when we say the government, we have to let people understand it's not the entire government that's bad. Although I look at our federal government and I just shake my head right now, like, what the F? But
right.
Most of them are even in the dark of what's happening.
Yeah, elected officials have no clue. No clue.
Well, but also think about the decline in the quality of our elected officials.
Oh my God!
So you're right. The power is in the darker halls, the deeper levels of government. But the people we think of as our face-to-face, our Congress, right? The senators, most of these people are all becoming politicians for the wrong reasons.
Right.
They're not public servants. They're in it for the money. They're in it for the power. Think about the lack of progress we've had in this country for the last 20 years because of this nonsense. And you look at these people and you think, how in the world did this person get elected?
Yeah.
Well, it makes you realize there's a lot more people out there like them that makes it scares you even more.
Or again, like everything else that's being manipulated, the voting is being manipulated because we have electronic machines. We've had these for how many years now? And sometimes people don't want to vote because they go, my vote won't count. People who go to a voting booth and say my vote was changed right in front of my face because of these things. How can you? It's the reason they don't want us to change is because they want to stay in power. They want to have the control. They want us to keep consuming not only their bullshit, but their products and the money. For them, it's about the money, the power, and the control. Sure. And that's their paradigm, and they don't want it upset. They don't want a thinking public who would say, hey, we're not going to do this anymore. We're not putting up with this crap anymore. And so that's why they do everything they can to keep us down. And we have these, I know people, they talk about the quote unquote shadow government. Well, the president, when we talk about the military and their top secret levels, where there's so many different top secret levels, and the president, you would think, would be at the highest of the top secret levels. No. He's about only two-thirds of the way up. And there's a bunch of levels.
Not even close. Yeah, and that's why but here's what we're doing. We're fighting about presidents. We're fighting about a bunch of yahoos that really don't have much power, but they have perceived power.
Yes.
But the real power isn't in a yahoo like Donald Trump. The real power, again, you will never know and you will never see who has the real power. These guys are all puppets.
Yep.
So that's just dressing for the turkey. That's for us to kind of absorb, right? The entertainment value of a moron like Donald Trump or someone who's just, it boggles the mind that we've wasted so much energy in the last 6 years or 5 to 6 years now on that. When, again, it's distracting us from what we really should be focusing on. And again, I don't make this a political thing, Democrat or Republican. This has absolutely nothing to do with party affiliation. This is way bigger than that. So if anyone gets offended by what I just said, as far as, well, he's Republican, Democrat, it doesn't matter. That's dressing. That's window dressing, Republican and Democrat at this point.
Yeah,
that's just keeping us apart. It's keeping us fighting. It's a civil. Right. We're very close to a civil war because of this.
Yep.
They don't mind. That's what they want.
Yep. Yep. And you know what? In my opinion, I've always looked at them as the flip side of the same coin. Doesn't matter which side you're talking about. They're all in it together. They're just coming at it from different angles to keep us fighting, to keep us at odds, to keep us in control. And so, again, we ignore...
Remember when bipartisanship was a thing? You have to go back that far. You're going back 30, 40 years. It was a thing. There was a desire to meet, in the middle to serve the needs of the entire population, within specifically talking about the U.S. But, that has gone by the wayside. It's more about ego and fame and posturing and who can pick up the torch and carry it's absolutely crazy what we have become. But one of the parallels that we It wasn't like we intentionally said, hey, we're going to go out and do this in this film, but what is happening within the three paradigms is you have people who are all believe in the same thing, but will cast stones at each other when it comes to defending their turf based on what they believe to be the end game. That's no different than what we're talking about, politically or across country borders. It's that whole idea that I have to protect my own. This is about me. This is about my and I'm gonna fight you if you don't agree with me. I would rather look at it as like, if we all believe in the same thing, if we're all believe in our country, why can't we all support our country? Why can't we all support our region of the world? Why can't we support the planet? As opposed to saying, I'm going to dig my heels in and you're wrong. I'm right, you're wrong. We had that. We experienced that with the three paradigms, with the different individuals that we spoke to. We have Dr. Jacob saying, I'm 100% right. They're all wrong. He goes, trust me, they're all wrong. You have you had both L.A. Marzulli and Timothy Alberino say the Bible is right 100% of the time. Everything in the Bible is 100% right 100% of the time, and everything else is wrong. So when we have those types of mindsets, we're not going to be a unified galactic partner. No. There's always going to be factions that are warring over what they have been led to believe to be the truth. And the fact of the matter is, none of us know what the truth is. None of us.
Right now,
but we can still search for it.
I always point to one of my favorite John Carpenter films that I feel is more relevant today than when it came out in the late 80s is They Live. Did you ever see that film?
Oh, it was great.
Yeah.
Yes.
The themes of that film, I know he was poking fun at society and the rich and poor, and he was trying to make a social commentary, but what he didn't realize is how close he nailed it on the head on how much we as a society are being manipulated, and and the real world is around us, but we're focused on the illusion. We're focused on the puppet show that they're making us see. They don't want us to put on the sunglasses and see what the reality is. And that goes with, getting back to more of the subject, dealing with ufology or the ETs, or we call them ETs, we call them UFO. We don't know exactly really what they are. There's a lot of different things. Could they be aliens from another planet? Yes, they could. Could they be interdimensional beings coming in, sideways and from another dimension? Yep, there's a possibility. Could they be spiritual types of beings? Yep, they could. We don't know. It could be all of them. I'll tell you that I saw my first UFOs, really, these last couple of years. I've seen them twice now. And I'm the first to tell you, I'm not going to sit there and point at them and say, oh my God, I just saw an alien spaceship. No, I saw lights in the sky that were acting very strange. They didn't look like conventional aircraft. Orange globes moving in different ways and then disappearing. Could they have been drones? No, my wife saw the same thing, and she thinks, it's drones from the military Picatinny arsenal down the road or whatever. She just dismisses it because she doesn't really accept that. I look at them as going, they're highly strange. I don't know what they are. Now, a friend of mine who lives near here on Sunday was out for a walk with her husband and saw this strange, long, big object in the sky, shot a video of it, send it to me. I'm trying to get her to send me the whole video so I can analyze it, because it's this long shimmering like string. She said it looked like the size of a football field, and then you see this other light moving around it. The oddest thing I've ever seen, and I can't find a rational explanation for it. But can I sit there and tell you exactly what it is? No, can't. Some people say, well, maybe it's like Elon Musk's Starlink satellites moving in line. No, these aren't individual lights. This was like a string, a glittering string. And it was stationary in the sky for about a minute before it disappeared. vanished. That's not a satellite. So we're dealing with things that I think in a lot of ways may still be beyond our comprehension. Just like people 100 years ago, you couldn't explain radiation to them. They wouldn't understand what that meant. You know, only in the nuclear age did we really find out about what that is and what that meant, or the things that we couldn't or couldn't see, the different aspects of the electromagnetic spectrum. For years, we only saw that light was light. You saw this visible little slit, not knowing that it stretches out in both directions. You know, in a great vast distance of infrared to ultraviolet. It existed, but yet we didn't know it existed until modern times.
And there's more of that unfolding to come. This awareness that's going to be created by discoveries in science that lead us, science in psychology and physics, all of that will lead us to these new understandings and shifts in belief paradigms. So those are things I think are worthy of celebrating and looking forward to, because the more we go through those changes, the more we will change our hypotheses and say, okay, this is what we were led to believe up until now. This is what we can now explore further. And as we go on that journey, we find out, more about who we are, why we're here, and what the interaction might be. It is something that what our ultimate goal is to stimulate the conversation, and like we're doing right now. Just imagine if we could get a room full of people who could step away from their devices for a couple of hours and just have stimulating conversation about things that they might be uncomfortable with but willing to explore. That would be a lot of fun.
I agree. I totally agree, and that's what I've loved this conversation tonight, because again, we have gone in a lot of different directions. We've had some tangents. I know I have.
Just a few.
But you know what? This is the whole thing. Is it's fostering a discussion. We don't have all the answers. We are just trying to figure things out. And your film and your films, plural, I should say, help people to look at these things from a different perspective, hear all points of view, and think for themselves. We are coming up on the end of the show here, and before we go, Irene, who unfortunately still hasn't been able to get back on because of her internet, she wanted me to ask you guys a question. We were talking about hybrids before, and she wants to know that if you came across someone that you knew or suspected was a hybrid, what would you do, or how would you react?
It's a great question.
Good question.
It's a good one, because John and I have talked about that moment. It's a moment in it when you realize that, if you were aware enough of it. But that actually happened to me. So, John, right? I mean, the airport. I ran into someone who was while we were working on the Stan Romanek documentary, ironically enough, which is why I think it was very synchronistic. But there was a girl at the airport that was absolutely a hybrid, and I couldn't believe what I was seeing. My son, who was a little kid at the time, he noticed it because he knew he was into it, and he knew we were working on the film. He's like, Dad, is that a hybrid? So he was all excited, and I didn't know. I was so taken back by it and so shocked by what I thought I was seeing that I kind of just walked by her, and then after a bit came back and to see her, and she was literally standing on the other side of the terminal of one of the gates, staring at me, waiting for me to come back. Like she knew I knew what she was. And I freaked out, because first of all, the eyes are something to behold. You're not used to that.
Right.
And the eyes were very oddly almond shaped and strange, and their hair. And but she knew I knew. Mm-hmm. And whether it was telepathically or not. And the reason I knew was because I was made aware, because John and I had been working on the Romanek documentary for a year. So we were open to this now, and I understood that this existed. I don't know why she was there, but so I try to get a picture. I just didn't know how to react. And I always say, well, I'd go up and talk to her. But if looking back on it, I would say telepathically, I'd try to communicate telepathically to see if it was real.
Yeah. I mean, I can imagine your reaction on that when seeing something like that. I've seen some strange people, but I haven't seen what I would think of as a hybrid yet. So, well,
I think it was strange.
Well, I know
a friend posed a question to me not too long ago, saying that he used to have dinner events, and this one guy would always ask bizarre questions. And he said one night was, if a UFO landed in front of you, the door opened, and an alien stepped out and said, "Come with us. You can't let anybody know that you're leaving. You can't talk to anybody, and you won't be returning. Would you go?" And my response right away was, of course I would go. I would go because that's kind of like the what's next, and that journey of understanding of what the possibilities could be. I can understand that you're like family, friends, leaving stuff behind. I can get that, but to me, the value of that what you could potentially learn, and if somebody said, well, what if it was a negative? What if they took you on board and tore you to pieces? So yeah. But I think I was looking at it not from that perspective, is that you were going to go on a journey of discovery. So that's the way that I kind of interpreted it. But kudos to the person who thought about it as being a very negative scenario. But it just it kind of begs the. Yeah, it's just like that, that whole idea, would you go? And I'm more curious about what's next than I am about what's behind me. So that to me, that would be appealing.
That's me too. I try to look at it from a positive experience. And, well, if I got torn up and eaten, then, well, I wouldn't ever do that again. Well, guys, I know we've come to the end of the show. I know you got to get going here. So just want to mention again for everyone to catch the film Extraordinary, The Revelations. And that is available on multiple platforms. Just real quick, where can people find this again?
If they go to our website, j3films.com, there will be a landing page that will allow you to click on a link that will take you to a Genius link that will show you the different options that are available, and you can click on the one that works best for you based on the platform that you use.
Fantastic. All right, so we've been talking with John Sumple and Jack Roth. And guys, thank you again for coming on. This has been a hell of a lot of fun. And Jack, when you get your book ready, we're going to have you come back on.
I'd be glad to. That would be a lot of fun. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you everyone for tuning in to another edition of the Paranormal UK Radio Show, the flagship show here on the Paranormal UK Radio Network. And Irene had to sign off because of the weather, so she wanted me to say goodbye to everyone, and we will catch you all next time. Everyone have a great evening. We'll talk to you soon.